pockets. Recording is in progress. So yes, I'm the two front pockets, the one without the stay and the one with the stay. That is what I'm going to be covering tonight. But I guess before we begin, comments, questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, when do we start sewing?
You can start sewing anytime you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and so this is, or you know, if you don't ever want to sew, you don't have to either. Because see, that's the beauty of these classes. I don't have to grade anything. So, you know.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
In your outline of which classes you were going to talk about things, you said at the first one you were going to talk about what pieces were cut of fashion fabric, which pieces were cut of other fabric, which were serged.
Okay.
Is that going to be covered?
You know, actually, I will cover that right now. So one moment, please. Let me look in my, because I have all my videos here. Let me fly front complete. Trouser pieces. Okay, that's the patterns. One moment, please. Side front stay. Okay, so this is going to be, you're going to have to take a few notes, and this will be recorded. So, okay, so out of the fashion fabric, you're going to cut two fronts. You're going to cut two backs. You're going to cut two pocket appliques, one for each side. You're also going to cut, and you'll see this a little later, the back pocket facing, or yeah, the back pocket facing welt. You're going to cut two of those, and then four of the waistband. So again, that's the two fronts, the two backs, the two pocket appliques for the side, the fronts, two of the back pocket welt pieces, and then four of the waistbands. And and then one of the fly front facing, and one of the fly or the zipper shield. So is everyone with me on that?
4 waistbands?
4 waistbands, because they're doubled and they're 2 per side. And there's going to be a seam in the center back. See this, I like to construct a trouser, whether it's a ladies or a men's, with a seam at the center back, so you can actually adjust it one way or the other.
So you can let it out. Okay, all right.
Yeah, because you see, the assumption is that with ladies' trousers, the assumption is that you're not going to let it out or take it in. You're just going to get rid of it, which doesn't seem, you know, I mean, if it's a ready to wear, fine. But, you know, if you're going to put some work into it, you want to make a trouser that you can adjust one way or the other. Because see, this is where men will not stand for something like this. Men's trousers have a good 2-inch waist seam allowances on the center back waist, so you can let it out. And so, you know, it's a convention in ready to wear that, you know, a woman's waistband is all one piece. So on the trouser, I like to have it as 2. Okay, and so that's the fashion fabric. The pocket bag, or yeah, the pocket bag fabric. You're gonna 2 pocket bags for the front. You can cut one of the pocket bags for the back pocket, and so that's you know, really what you would cut out of the pocketing fabric. Then of course you need your zipper, and so then when you're serging, I like to overlock the back crotch seams and the side back seam allowances, but we don't want to overlock the back inseam yet. When we construct the trouser, what we're going to be doing, if you notice on this pattern, the back inseam is cut a 1/2 inch shorter than front, and you stretch it and press it to before you sew it together. So if you overlocked the back inseam, that might inhibit the stretch on that seam.
Can you repeat that, please, about where you're overlocking?
Okay, you overlock the back. On the back, you want the back crotch seams, the seam allowances, the side back seam, the side seams on the back seam allowances. Okay, and see,
Okay.
and Vivian, I saw that you had a question too.
I'm stuffing cookies in my face saying, I don't need an expandable waistband. I will. Can I ask you really quick?
Yes,
On some patterns that I've made, they've said to serge the seam allowances together, and others say do it separately. And yeah,
I
is
like
that
them
key?
separate because I like to press the seams open. I think it gives a cleaner finish.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So on the trouser front, you want to serge the seam allowance for the crotch seam and the inseam and the side seam. And so once you get that all that done, you're going to interface, and you'll see this as we construct. You're going to interface. I just completely interface at least two of the waistbands for the outside. I like to interface the fly facing, and I like to interface the zipper shield. And I use a fusible on that. So,
Kenneth, question about the pockets.
yes,
To go back, you said there's two different pockets, but you said the one with the full facing helps it not sag out. Am I correct in
stay,
that? The stay, I'm sorry, the stay.
yes, and because if you on this trouser, it has kind of a diagonal line as the style line on the pocket. So if you have any kind of behind, I
Yeah.
don't anymore. I've discovered that, and it's very distressing. It pulls, and you can see the side seam will bow towards the back, and then the pocket will gap open. And so the pocket, when we're constructing the one with the stay, which you're going to see tonight, it holds the side seam and the center front to a fixed width.
Okay, so technically, depending, I guess, on your body shape, you don't need it, but this is just so it
You don't
doesn't.
need it, but I think it gives a cleaner line.
Got it. Okay, I was just trying to figure out the difference between the two and when
And
you
you'll
need
see
it.
them, because that's going to be the video lessons tonight
Perfect.
is constructing both of them. So,
Great.
yes, Vivian.
I also think maybe here's a question for the rest of the ladies here. Has anyone ever purchased a pair of pens, women's pens, dress pens, that has that set up? The stay? Oh, you have. I've never seen it. I went
Yeah,
to
so
a-
there's a brand of jeans called Not Your Daughter's Jeans that uses a front stay in the back.
Okay, it's very cool. I've never seen it or heard of it.
Well, it's
Some of the
Last week.
also.
some of the
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
some of the trousers from Talbot's will have that across the front, and some of their jeans do too.
Well, it really is it's a good solution. Also, if you're making a pleated trouser, it's really good on pleated trousers. I'm starting to see pleated trousers again. I, of course, am not able to wear them because I'm built like a hot water heater. But a pleated trouser with the stay makes the pleats hang clean because everything is held to a fixed width, and so. Yeah, I think back on those days when I actually had pleated trousers, but I was much younger then. So, there you have it. So, other questions? Yes, go ahead, Becky.
Interfacing.
Yeah.
I always struggle with what type to use. Yeah, is it heavy enough? Is it too light? Would you use the same thing on the zipper shield and fly facing as you would the waistband?
Yes.
Is there a particular product you like? Interfacing.
Okay, well, what I'm using here is called a fusible weft. And you see this a lot in ready to wear. There's a fusible tricot is also good. The kind of lower on the list would be a fusible pellon. But a fusible weft or fusible tricot are both, I think, really good all-purpose fusible interfacings to have in your stash.
I use the tricot mostly, but I've looked at it and I've wondered, is that heavy enough for a waistband?
If you cut it with the grain line going horizontally, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you're not looking for thickness, you're looking at preventing it from stretching.
Yes,
You're not really that concerned about the thickness. I
right,
just,
right. And so, this waistband is going to be a little thicker than other waistbands, but I just like a fusible tricot on when I'm making this kind of trouser.
and you're only using one layer
One layer.
of,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so other questions? Okay, so let the show begin. So I'm going to start with the side pocket with stay. Where's the other one? One moment, please. I'm no stay. Okay, so there we are. I know I appear to be talking to myself here, but okay, so we're going to start with the pocket with no stay first. And so as always, just kind of give a shout out if you have a question and you need me to stop, because I'm happy to do that. So let me just bring this in a little bit. So let us begin. The side pocket is a classic detail on men's trousers. This line here can really be any shape. It can be straight up like this. It can be curved like in a jeans pocket, but they all construct pretty much the same. Now, something to show you here. This I call the applique. And then the pocket bag, of course, is white. Now, when I turn it over, you can see that this particular pocket is all cut in one piece. So we have a fold along that edge there. Now, one other thing I'm going to show you, this is what's called a gate. I'm going to make you wait for that one, but it's a fun little detail to have on all of your trouser pockets. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get busy. The pieces for the pocket. Down here, we have the pocket bag. Sometimes this is cut in two pieces. In this particular instance, it's all cut as one. And then directly above it is what I call the applique. This is cut out of the fashion fabric. It will set onto the pocket bag before we put the pocket bag into the trouser. And then, of course, here we have the trouser. So these are the pieces we're going to be working with. So let's get busy. I've worked ahead to stay the pocket edge. We're going to be cutting a strip of fusible lengthwise grain running parallel to the cut edge. As you can see, I have pinked this edge here. This is about 1 inch wide for a 5/8 inch seam. So as you can see, I'm stopping it just a little bit below the notch. So this has prepared the body to accept the pocket. So now let's start constructing the pocket. So here is the pocket bag and the applique. The applique is going to sit right about there. What this does is it just finishes the fabric so you don't have to use the face fabric on the pocket, way too much thickness. The object here is we need to sew this to the pocket bag. So I will go to the pressing table, turn this over 1/4 inch, and I will bring it back here so we can pin the two together. So here, as you can see, I have pressed back the fabric by 1/4 inch, and I will line these cut edges up. And pin. So there we are. This is all pinned. I will go to the machine, edge stitch 1/8 of an inch on this edge, and machine based at 1/4 inch to 3/8 along these two. And I will bring you back the results. I'm back from the machine. And as you can see, I've sewn an edge stitch all along that edge, and then a machine based holding everything together along the side seam and the waist. So now bringing this in, the next step is to sew pocket bag to the opening. This is the right side of the fabric here. There's the right side of the fabric there. So to line that up, line up these cut edges. There is our clip. So we're going to stop our stitching right at that clip. So I will go to the machine and sew at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and I will meet you at the pressing table. And back from sewing machine. So my first step.
Sorry, where did you get that clip from? It was on the pattern?
It should be on the pattern, yes. There's a
Okay,
matching
fine, no
knife.
problem. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take a clip right to the end of that stitching, right there. Here, we press, and we bring the
Brown,
pocket.
where do you know where that notch goes? Is that just the end of your drafting? Or?
Okay, this here, that is, it should be on the pattern. It's the end of the pocket.
Kenneth, maybe
Kenneth?
maybe it's just me. I'm looking at the pattern that I cut out and taped. I don't see the notch.
Okay, well, you just, where this seam here intersects the side seam, that would be the notch.
Okay.
Okay?
So is that the bottom of the pocket opening then?
Yes, that's where the pocket opening stops.
Okay.
Okay? Let me just run this back a little bit. Ah, there we are. And then we bring the pocket bag over and press all of the seam allowances towards the pocket bag. Here, we then fold everything into position. You see, this is where you're glad that you clipped right there. And when you press, you want to favor it just a teeny bit, as you can see, about 1/8 of an inch. This point, certainly doesn't hurt to put a few pins in because we're going to be top stitching in the next step.
Kenneth,
Yeah, I will meet you.
if you didn't want to top stitch that, could you understitch the pocket bag to the seam allowance?
Yes, you absolutely could. So you would just come in here and sew 1/8 of an inch down from that stitching line. So yes, that is also an option.
Okay.
Okay. At the sewing machine. So now we top stitch, but I like to start the top stitching right at that corner. And the top stitch length is 3.5. For a top stitch, you want it a little longer rather than too short. I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch from folded edge. So having the top stitching come out and up just gives it a better finish, in my opinion. So, show you the result. There you go. That's what it looks like at the end. And that will end up in the seam allowance, not to be seen. Now, I will take this over to the pressing table, press it, and I will meet you back at the work table. So here is the pocket sewn to the trouser front. Now, a little explanation before the next step. In the final garment, in the final result, that is going to be the pocket. So we want to finish this seam here. So really, and I do this all the time, I will put it like this to try to figure out, because I get dyslexic, we're going to finish with the French seam. So the final row of stitching, the pocket will be like this. So to begin, we need to turn it opposite, like that, and line up the cut edges. And I will take this over to the machine and sew at 1/4 inch, and I will bring back the result. As you can see, I've sewn it and I've pressed it. What I like to do along this seam allowance is to use either a pinking shear or a pinking wheel. It makes turning this right side out so much easier. So what that looks like is this. I will meet you over at the pressing table. From here, we turn everything right side out. You can run your finger along this seam, but as you can see, having that pinked edge is going to make that turn so much more evenly. And use your point turner if you need to get this corner sharp enough. And simple press. Once pressed, a few pins, and over to the machine to sew a 3/8 of an inch seam, and I will meet you back at the work table. Now I've sewn and I've pressed. Now we just want to line up everything. Line up the top edges of the pocket. Line up the side seams like so. Now, one little test, one thing you want to look at. Sometimes your fabric wants to shift a little bit, which this seems to want to do. And so if you need to, you can cheat that down so that everything else lays flat. That's entirely kosher. So I'm going to just pin that there. Over. Yes, much better. Then I'll just change these pins around here. So I can machine based along here and machine based in the seam allowance along here. So I will go off to the machine and do that and bring you back the results. So I have machine based it along here. And I have machine based it along here. There we are. So the next step would be pressing this crease. So I will meet you over at the pressing table to do that. So one final press on the pocket bag. And to the sewing machine for one more little detail. So it is starting to look like a pocket. But one little bit of explanation before I show you this last little refinement. A pocket that has a severe angle like this is attractive, but it does have a tendency to, if you're sitting in a car or on a sofa, to have your sofa change fall out right here. So this next little trick is something I learned from David Coffin from Threads magazine. And what you're going to do is, now that you have your pocket installed, before you sew it to the upper of the bag, you're going to come in here. I have drawn the red line. This is right at the end where we put our snip. And you're going to sew just through the two pocket bag pieces. You don't want to sew through anything else. A line of stitching and back tack here. Now, what's going to happen is that when you sit down, this is called a gate. So your change is going to hit there, and the gate keeps your change kind of down in here instead of going out and falling out into the sofa cushion. So it looks like is so you're going to sew through all the layers except the top layer. This line is about 1.25 inches. So when I trim it, bring this over here so you can really see. See, it will not impede your hand going into the pocket. There we go. See, this is what it looks like from the opposite side. So your hand will be able to get into the pocket. That's what it looks like here. So your hand can get into the pocket, but happily your change can't get out unless you take it out. Now, let's go to the paper table and look at what we've just accomplished. So here we have. Yes.
What sort of angle do you sew that down from the side seam at?
It's rough. I would say maybe like a 45 degree would be fine. Between
Okay.
45 and 60 degrees, not a full 90 degrees.
Okay.
Okay. The pockets. The next stop is installing the fly front zipper. Well, actually, we're going to take another, that'll be a little later because we're going to be doing the other pocket. But so now questions. Crickets, crickets, crickets.
That blind hem is so clever on the pocket. Is that a couture technique or a Kenneth
Oh,
technique?
you mean the French seam on the pocket?
Yeah, sorry, French seam. Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I see that a lot on, well, I've just done it on my jeans for years. And, you know, I can't remember where I saw it first, but it wasn't a couture thing. But it's just, you know, it's a nice clean finish. It doesn't take all that long. You don't have all that overlocking stuff to get anything snagged on. So, yeah, that's where
Oh,
that,
and when I overlock, sometimes still after a lot of wear, you get holes, but this way you've got the double seam. It's so clever.
thank you. So other questions? Crickets, cricket. Now, Lori, I thought you were going to be bird watching. You want to turn your mic on.
I got the date wrong. I thought it was today and it was actually yesterday, so we missed it.
Oh, damn. Okay. Because she emailed me earlier and said that you were going to be watching bird watching online.
Well, there's a guy that was going to do a presentation on local birds so that you'd know what they sounded like and looked like, because we always debate, what's that bird? What's that sound? And so we really wanted to see it, and it was yesterday.
Damn. Well, we're glad you were able to.
Also, my husband said, well, just go sit in the living room and do your class. So that's what I'm doing.
There we go. Okay, so other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. On the part that you call the gate,
Yes.
okay, wouldn't that also help prevent that when you put your hand into the pocket from distorting the pocket, that opening?
What do you mean by distorting the pocket?
Making it, I see it in my brain, I'm not sure how to put it in words. Having it open up too much, or just kind of like resting your hand on the pocket and maybe distorting the fabric to how it looks.
Well, what I have observed using the gate on trousers is, because recently, I don't know if you saw on Instagram, my husband, God love him, he hates to ask for anything mending. And he had this pair of, because he buys very nice clothing. You know, he's not a cheap person. And he had this one pair of gray flannels that he'd worn a big hole in the pocket. And I kept saying, honey, I can fix that. Honey, I can fix that. And finally he lost a Tiffany money clip. And he was so upset, and I understand, because it was something he had for a long time. It had a lot of meaning to him. And so I didn't say, if you let me fix it, I just said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, that's terrible. So I said,
I would have probably said, if you let me fix that, that wouldn't have happened.
well, but you see
This is why you're a better spouse than me.
it won't get the money clip back, and it will just,
That's true.
you see, he's expert in beating himself up. I don't have to do it because he'll do it for me. And so I just said, okay, sweetie, can I have the trousers, please? It's my spousal duty to repair the trousers. And so what I had to do is go in and basically, replace the bottom half of the trouser with some new pocketing fabric. And when I was in there, even in good ready-to-wear trousers, that applique just kind of, if you really look at it, there's kind of this big tangle in there. It's not neatened up. I was kind of surprised by that. And so that is one of the things I did, was I went in on those pockets and I sewed the gate in, because, when you saw me open it up, it's just nice and clean. You have a seam there. So I don't know if it keeps the pocket itself from distorting, but I think it keeps the pocket opening crisp.
Okay, maybe that's what I was trying to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so other questions? Okay, so now the other one, we've done the pocket without the stay. Now we're going to be making the pocket with the stay. A lot of it's going to feel familiar, but that's what we're going to do. So let us continue. So here we are. This is the side pocket with the stay. You can see here, that particular angle is the edge of the pocket, and you can put your hand in, obviously. But the object here, this part here, keeps the horizontal circumference at a fixed length. The other pocket, where we don't have a stay, doesn't do that. And so what you run into is you get a gap. Your pocket will pull
May
open.
I ask a
There
pleat
are
question?
reasons why you would make. Yeah, go ahead.
So, like you said, pleated pants are back,
Yes.
and you see these pleated pants, and they show them on Instagram, and they've made the patterns, and they're wearing them, and the pleats are gapping all, like opening all over the place. That's not fit properly, right? They shouldn't like splay way open.
Well, you see, part of it is they're probably a little too tight to begin.
Yeah.
But the other thing is they don't have a stay. And so now, while we're talking, we're kind of on this because I really warm up to pattern making. If you were going to make a pleated trouser, what I start with is the trouser basic. And I will draft the whole pocket with the stay on the basic. Because you want this, this is your crucial information. You want to hold it to that fixed width. And then after I have all of these pieces, then I will, on the main trouser pattern, I will open it up and spread to add the pleats. So the pleats then will hang pretty much closed because you have locked this width to a fixed length. And so the pleats don't splay open. But a lot of times, I shouldn't talk smack, but I'm going to for a moment. I see a lot of things on Instagram, and and they're so proud, and good for them, they're sewing. I'm glad for that. But I would like them to have a little more information so that they could make something that looks a little more successful. Because pleated trousers, if you don't have a stay on them, you look like a bag of doorknobs.
So if you were going to back engineer something, you bought a pattern that has a pleat on the front.
Yeah.
Would you close that pleat out and then
yes,
trace
I would
piece?
fold it completely closed, and then do all of this here, and then you can use the pleat. But you want the pleat closed so that you know what this distance here is.
And to fit that, you would fit that with a muslin without the pleat, right?
That's right. That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And see, this
Thank
is,
you.
this see, this is what's so lovely about making for yourself is you can take this, when you get your sloper that fits beautifully, you can have plain front trousers, you can have pleat front trousers, you can have pretty much anything you want. So, but yeah, I add the pleats after I fitted it.
Excuse me.
Hannah?
Yes. Go ahead.
How long would you make the pleat, the sewing portion?
Well, let's see. Generally, it's about 1.5 inches from the waist.
Okay.
And there's a whole thing I talk about at my trouser draft book where, the two stitching lines are not dead parallel. The two stitching lines, if you make them dead parallel, you angle in by 1/8 of an inch, so they curve slightly inward. And that makes it so that when the stitching line, at the end of the stitching line, you don't have this weird little burst of the pleat. It will hang open, and the leading edge of the pleat will hang square. That's a whole other little thing. But yeah, about 1.25 inches is plenty. I don't like to have the pleats emerge right at the waist. I think that's not attractive.
Are you talking about where you offset the pleats like you taught us in the pleating class?
Well,
so that they don't spread, or it's a different thing?
Well, but see, this is what you're thinking of is the dropping down at the back of the pleat by 1/8 of an inch. Actually, let me get a piece of paper and I'll draw it for you, because it's a little hard to just describe it. So let me just stop the screen sharing for a moment. So
I think I have that book anyway. I'll look it up too.
So
We didn't have a pleating class.
that's a whole other. So you have, let's just say this is the pleat. And so what you're going to do is, first off, you fold the pleat closed, and then you can take your tracing wheel, Sterling handle tracing wheel if you have one. and you can run the tracing wheel on that seam line there to get this shape here. And so then at the back of the pleat, what you're going to do is drop down 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to exaggerate it a little for effect. This works on any pleat. So, you know, if you, can everyone see that?
Mhm.
So that blue line is actually going to be the new line, and you're going to pull that up to match everything. And so by pulling the back of the pleat up, it's going to make the pleat hang closed. So if you've ever made something with knife pleats where the pleats don't hang closed, they rock open, this is the fix. Okay, so now the second thing is, you know, if you're going to be stitching it down a little bit, which I like to do, what I like to do is come in an 1/8 of an inch on either side. Oh, hang on, there we are. And then you're going to redraft the stitching line so it curves out to meet. So the blue line, that is your new stitching line for the pleat.
We can't see it, Kenneth.
Oh no, oh dear. Well, let's see what,
There we go.
okay, there we are, yeah. Okay, so does that make sense? So the blue line is the stitching line. The little dot is where you're going to end that row of stitching. And there's something about that, you know, that curving in slightly, because what you're doing is you're gradually releasing a little bit of that pleat in that seam. That's really the object of the game. So by having that seam kind of angle, you know, go out a tiny bit, it releases the stress. And so the seam doesn't, you don't have the seam and then this little where the leading edge occurs. It'll just fall nicely from there.
Do
I'm
you-
actually really pleased. That's exactly what I did this weekend when I need to recopy it. It's hard to read it, but
Yeah,
I'm patting myself on the back.
good for you. Good job, woman. Good job.
Do
Okay.
you do both? Do you do both tricks? Do you do the drop at 1/8 of an inch? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the dropping 1/8 of an inch, that's like on any pleat. Do not follow. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those do not pass go, do not collect $200. Just drop that 1/8 of an inch on skirts, on trousers, on blouses, anywhere that there's a pleat. It just crisps it up. It's just one of those little things that you think, that looks so much better. Okay, so other questions?
Yeah, before you go on
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
showing the stay,
Mhm.
I have usually 2 darts in my waist.
Mhm.
And if I make the pocket stay, I have to put the darts in that.
Yeah. Mhm.
How do you get rid of some of the thickness, or does it matter?
Well, you know, if you use a thinner pocketing fabric, it should be fine. You know, that is what I would say. And you know, you could even like thin out some of the return and press it open and have the seam allowances facing in. So that would be, you know, that way it would present a clean appearance on the inside of the trouser, and you will have removed some of that bulk. Okay. Okay. So other questions?
Kenneth, I wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not understanding. You're putting the dart in the front, obviously, right? If you have front darts.
Yes. Mhm.
But wouldn't the same logic apply? You would fold out the dart in the paper and then draft the stay to that measurement? Or are you
Not
putting a dart?
necessarily. I think it depends, you know, it's one of those, if you're built like a boy, you can get away with that. But
Okay,
if you have any kind of a shape, if you've got a nice hourglass shape or something like that, and especially if if you have 2 darts, you have an hourglass shape.
okay.
You really want to have the dart on the stay.
You do
you
want
know.
to have the dart on the stay. Okay.
Yeah,
But-
because
but if it's a-
what the stay,
yeah.
the stay is kind of a stand-in for a foundation garment.
Okay.
And so you want the stay to actually reflect the figure that it's covering. And so then having, I mean, there's this whole thing, oh, let's sew without darts. And if you can get away with that, that's great. But there are times you can't. And in those cases, you want to have the dart because it's going to give you a better result.
got it. But the pleat is different. That would, you would just pleat. Okay, I think I'm understanding a little bit.
And
Yeah.
see, and you know, if you're making a pleated trouser, you could turn the darts into pleats if you really needed to.
I'm not there yet, but okay.
But that, yeah, that's you know, higher math. But
One thing at a time. Yeah, one thing at a time.
Yeah. Okay,
Going back
so
to the diagram that you just did.
what was
is
that?
Going back to the diagram you just did,
Yes. Oh, wrong one.
the other side of the paper.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
you're taking off 1/8 of an inch from the top of the pleat or just from that
The
last
top of
item?
The top of the
It looks
pleat.
like it's from halfway down. Okay, from
Yeah,
the
this
top.
is an
No,
1/8 of
not
an
that,
inch.
not that. The two
This here,
sides.
you're
Yeah.
going in 1/8 of an inch.
But you put your ruler just from half of the depth of the dart of the
About
pleat or
half.
straight to the top? Okay,
Yeah, I blended up about halfway.
okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So other questions? Good questions we're having this evening. Okay. So now the pocket with the stay. So let us continue. Okay. But this particular pocket with the stay is the one we're going to begin first because I think it's cleaner. We have a lot of work to do. So let's get busy. Before we begin either of these pocket constructions, you can see here I have the trouser front. I have marked the clip here and the clip here. I've also stayed this edge. You could stay this with Trico on the lengthwise grain. You could use fusible stay tape. That's all up to you. I've also overlocked this seam allowance and the front inseam and the front outseam. So a little bit of preparation for both methods of installing the pockets. So here we have all of the pieces for the side pocket with the stay. We have the body here. We have the applique, which is cut from the wool. We have the pocket front. What I have done is I've taken the tracing paper and carbon and marked this line here. You can see there. So this is the pocket front. To orient you here. Pocket back, I've marked that line as well. This will eventually sew to the pocket back. So now, the first thing I want to do actually is to prepare this piece to sew to the pocket back. So I will press 1/4 of an inch over and bring this back here. So as you can see, I have pressed that seam allowance back the 1/4 of an inch. And now I want to line it up because we're going to sew that down to the pocket back first. And then I'll machine baste around the perimeter. There's no mystery here. So what I will do, now that I have everything pinned together, is I'm going to machine this all the way around. If you have a little mismatch down here, don't worry about that. That'll just go in the seam allowance. So I will bring back the results. So here we are. As you can see, I sewed an edge stitch 1/8 of an inch in from that edge, and then machine baste all the way around. So the pocket back is prepared. Next, we address the pocket front. The pocket front goes right sides together. and joins with the pocket, open it. Now we have sewn, we have the staying, we've stayed underneath here. So we can just pin these two together. And I will take these over to the machine and sew at 5/8 of an inch. Back from the machine, I sewed 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. So we want to press as sewn first. Then I like to press towards the pocket. First press, and then when you turn everything this way, when you're pressing, you just want to see a little tiny bit of the wool showing. You don't want this pocket seam to show, you don't want the pocket to show. It's called favoring. It's going to show just a little tiny bit. Now, the next step, I will go to the machine and do the decorative top stitch, and I will bring you back the results. As you can see, I've sewn the top stitching and pressed everything. This is now where we join the pocket front to the pocket back. So let me just pull out a little bit here to give you an idea. Okay. Ultimately, I have to do this like this because otherwise I get confused. Ultimately, in the final result, these two are going to sit like this. So we want a French seam all along this edge. We'll sew this later. So what I find is that I put it like this, and then I turn this out and match that up, because you sew the French seam in two different
That is
ways.
the hardest part of making a pocket. I've done them on jeans pockets or other things like similar, like inseam, like pockets that you like hide in a like a horizontal seam.
Right.
And that is the hardest part of French seaming. That is the mind bend around how to flip it so you don't sew them inside out.
And
For
actually,
me,
and I show this because I go through that every time I do one of these pockets. You know, I
you
have
make
to
me
put,
feel better knowing that.
see, I'm slightly dyslexic, and there are certain things I know now that I have to do so that I don't get it wrong, because, you know, I don't like getting it wrong. I hate to rip out stitches. And so, you know, it's one of those, I know that, okay, it's going to end up like this. And so that means I have to take it and do this and start sewing that way. So that's, you know, that's entirely, you know, there's no shame in that. As long as you get it correct, that's the important thing. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I will sew this all at 1/4 of an inch, trim it with the rotary cutter, and meet you at the pressing table. As you can see, I have pinked this edge with the rotary cutter. And it's just good to know. The rotary cutter, I like better than pinking shears. I find it cuts reliably. Pinking shears sometimes chew the fabric. So cutting this with the rotary cutter is going to make this easier to turn and press. So now, turn everything right side out. And we press. Once pressed, I want to pin. Once pinned, I will sew top stitching at 3/8 of an inch. So I will go to the machine, sew this, and bring it back when I'm finished. We've sewn the top stitch. We press. So now back to the work table. We're back from the work table. And what I'm doing right now is I just want to make sure everything lies flat, because now that falls where it needs to fall. Make sure that that is smoothed out. And then to pin along this marked line. Once I've pinned this line here, I'm going to sew through both layers, blend the top stitching in down here, and that is actually going to create the entire pocket. So I will bring this back from the sewing machine when I've sewn it. So here we are with our pocket sewn, as you can see, sewn that line there, blending in. So this is our pocket, this is the stay. For the finishing, what I like to do is lay it flat and smooth everything out. You want to make sure that this seam here matches on both. And then just a little detail here. If you have a little extra here, don't sweat that. It's more important to have everything lie flat than it is to have these two edges match. So pin that and pin that. And let me zoom out a moment and show you where I'm going to sew. I'm going to sew a machine based across here and down to there. And then I will bring everything back and show you the results. So here is the result. As you can see on the top, it's about 3/8 of an inch, machine based. And down along the front, it's about 1/4 of an inch, because see, ultimately this stay is going to catch in the fly front when you install. Now this little extra here, it is just a simple matter of trimming that off to match everything. So no harm, no foul. So here we have our results. This is the side pocket, but notice if you get a pole horizontally, that does not affect the gap on the pocket. Turn this over on this side, and you can see this is finished with the French seam. Then the pocket is closed here. So we have our pocket here, and this here keeps the horizontal dimensions so that the pocket will not gap when you wear it. And that is how you make a pocket with a stay. Okay, so questions?
Yes, I have a question, Kenneth.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the stay,
Mhm.
if you want to use like a mesh,
Mhm.
okay, how would you apply that mesh to the pocket?
You know, you could just seam it. You could use you could make the pocket with the fold, you know, the first pocket we did, and then
Okay.
sew this to that fold and extend that over to the center front.
And you would do it the whole length of the pocket.
I would do it fairly far down on the pocket. Yeah. Because
Okay, thank
if
you.
you have it just at the top, what you run into is sometimes the pocket might want to curl outward.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. So other questions?
Yeah, Kenneth, would you
Yeah.
put that gate stitch on this too?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
would just feel like the coins are gonna go in and you have to dig under it, but I
Oh, no,
understand.
actually, it's not that long. And so when you put your hand in, you don't even really feel it.
Okay, I
No,
do
but
like the idea. I'm
Yeah.
just, sometimes when you get stuff stuck and you're trying to
No,
find the
no.
coins.
Because see, generally when you're trying to get coins out of your pocket, you're standing.
Got it.
So the coins will actually settle in the bottom part of the pocket. It's when you're like reclining on the sofa that they tend to want to fall out, which is very annoying. Or when
Okay,
you're
that's-
driving somewhere.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
cool thing. I never heard of that before.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
cool.
like I said, yeah, I like to credit when I learn something from someone. And David Coffin, he has an excellent book on trousers, by the way. So if you're wanting to do a deep dive on trousers, it's definitely worth checking out.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so other questions?
I have a question. If you want to make your trousers, but you don't want the slant on the pocket,
Mhm.
so you're going to extend it out to the side seam, basically. Do you make the placket the same width?
I would. You mean the applique?
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah, that's what I mean.
yeah, the design line, whether it's angled, whether it's right out at the seam, whether it's like a jeans pocket, that is all just design. But the way
Mhm.
you draft the pocket is the same for all of it.
Okay,
Okay, so other questions?
thank you.
Kenneth, I was wondering on the pocket without the stay, you
Mhm.
clipped after you sewed the edge of the pocket opening.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't a clip when there was a stay. Is that because the pocket's in two pieces?
Well, no, that I will confess I was dealing with a little different pattern on that.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
the clip at the end of the pocket opening would apply for that too.
okay. Thanks.
Okay. So other questions? I see a cat. I see a doggy.
That's
Oh,
Muzz. Who's making all these noises? Where all these voices are coming from?
Well, I had a dog and she never was fooled by voices over the phone or anything like that. She just, it never, because I used to call my friend Stuart when she would stay with Uncle Stuart, I would call him to see how she was doing, and he'd hold the phone up, God love him. And, he said, she doesn't get it. It's, I guess it's because she didn't smell me. She heard me, but she didn't smell me. So, different dogs and different cats are different, but yeah. So other questions? Yes, go ahead. Yes,
Oh,
Liz.
so Kenneth, in the past, I've always had a problem at the bottom of the pocket slant
Mhm.
and that it kind of bubbles up, or, like you said, everything needs to be straight. But if we're not straight,
Mhm.
if we have a bit of a bump there, or belly or a hip,
Yeah.
does it still lay the same way there, flat,
Well,
or?
if you have a pocket stay in there, it should all
Oh,
be nice and yeah. Because I guess I would ask you, are you thinking about trouser pockets that didn't have the stay, because you wouldn't
Yeah.
have that? Yeah.
yeah,
See that the men's trouser pocket, guys for the most part are straight up and down.
yeah.
And so there's a lot, because recently I had a gal contact me, and she wanted to, her son was very athletic and apparently had a very tiny waist and, very meaty hips because he's an athlete. And so she wanted me to draft a pattern for him for trousers. She wanted, this, and so then she would make them. And, for the most part, he was a guy. It was easy, and he was kind of astonished that I could draft it. It was like, okay, this is nothing. And see, a geneticist said to me that women are more genetically diverse. Men, the Y chromosome, there are blank spots on it, which explains a lot if you think about it. And so, I have found that as a rule, women's shapes are a lot more diverse. Men, there are two shapes. They're kind of straight up and down. They're either narrow and deep, or they're flat and wide, but they're kind of straight up and down. So I would recommend a pocket with a stay if you have any kind of curves. I think it's a lot more flattering line.
Okay, and I think your construction of the bag solves a lot of that than the big four, they make your seam kind of all in one, and it hooks in a lot of seam allowances and things.
Well,
so
and see,
I
that's,
think you're
if
right.
I'm sewing a jean pocket, I will take that all over to the side seam and
Yeah.
that close. But on a trouser, I like to bring that up so that I don't have a lot of that bulk on the side seam.
I think that's it too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so other questions?
I've
So-
made
Okay, yeah,
jeans
Janet, go
using
ahead.
this technique and it really works.
Oh, good.
Because you did my jeans pattern for
Yes,
me.
I did. I remember.
Yeah, and it works even
a
with my
testimonial.
darts.
Yes, Janet. Okay,
Picking up straight up and down, some of us are. So how small a dart would just go ahead and take that out of the side seams? I mean,
if it was generally dark, a dart is 3/4 of an inch, generally, for a lady's skirt in the front, 3/4 of an inch. So you could bring in 3/8 at the side seam and you could bring in 3/8 at the center.
okay, my question is, if it's even smaller than that, is it worth,
Just take it in at the center and the side.
okay, that
Yeah,
was my
because,
question.
guys don't have a front dart as a rule. For that reason, because we don't have a shape. So if you're kind of nice and smooth in the front, mazel tov, the other ladies here would be like jealous.
Not smooth, just square.
Okay. Well, but that's okay too. Whenever it fits, it automatically flatters. That's the thing.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
so Lori, you had a question?
So I'm trying to draft a jeans skirt without a dart on the front. And would you do the same thing? You would take half the dart and you just have a crooked center front where the fly goes in.
Yeah, well, it'll
Not crooked, but instead of vertically, it would be angled slightly.
Yeah, and as a rule on a trouser anyway, very rarely is that center front line on a dead straight grain. It
Okay.
angles, depending on the figure, it will angle away from the side seam or towards. So you don't have to worry about that.
But you would take half the dart and move it to the center front and half the dart and move it to the, awesome. Thank you. You've just saved me a bunch of denim fabric.
Well, you see, that's why I'm here. I'm glad I can be of help. Okay, so
Thank
who
you very
else?
much.
Yes, Vivian.
Yes. The difference between regular muslin that you would buy to make your 12s
Mhm.
and pocket fabric.
Yeah. Well, there is pocketing fabric that they sell. It's generally a very narrow wailed herringbone or a twill weave. But if you buy pocketing fabric, they tend to soak you for it because they think, ooh, they're making trousers. If you look for a thin cotton twill, that is a really good it's a good stand-in for pocketing. It's durable and it's not very heavy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so who else?
Is it technical on you?
Yes,
Why did you say that the center front of the pants of a fly is non-straight grain?
it's not. It's just not.
Right.
Because see, where you get the grain of a trouser, and you're going to see it a little further down when we talk about pressing the crease. As I learned it, the crease is the grain line.
Okay, that's
So
the
the distance between the crease and the outseam is the same as the distance between the crease and the inseam. So the crease is the grain line. And so, because I had a private student, I felt so bad for her because she did it. She went ahead and made the whole trousers and she brought them to class and they were a plaid. Now think about this for just a moment. She matched the center front seam on the plaid. And so everything was just, I felt really bad for her. She did a beautiful job on the pants, but it was kind of gave me vertigo because the plaid wasn't reading square. It was kind of angled.
I got
So,
you.
yeah.
I don't really do pants. I do mostly dresses. So there, the center
Yeah.
front is always straight grain. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So other questions? Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, Kenneth. So if you're doing a pleated pant that doesn't have a front pocket for design reasons,
Mhm.
can you still put a stay in and that just goes in behind everything, or how do
Absolutely.
you draft that?
Absolutely. You would
The
just
same
draft
way?
it. You would draft it kind of the same way. It would just be a piece inside that holds everything together.
Okay,
It doesn't,
thank you.
it doesn't have to be attached to a pocket.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Lori.
I just wanted to ask a question about the darts and the center front thing again. On a skirt,
Mhm.
can you do the same thing? If you're gonna have a front fly or a front seam on the skirt, but you don't want any darts and you don't want like a quarter circle or half circle, you just want like a, can you rotate the darts out in the same way on a skirt?
You know, this is one of those, you could try it and then make a muslin to see how it fits. But if you have a center front, I think you probably could.
Like it's a
If there's
seam, right?
Yeah, if there's a seam,
Yeah.
actually finesse some of that into the center front and then finesse the rest into the side seam.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm struggling. Like I fiddled with a pattern for a long time and I moved it 2 different ways and it all ended up the same and it all kind of, I took it all out at the side seam, but I just don't think that's going to be right.
Well,
I don't
the
think
thing
there'll be
is,
enough shaping.
if you take it out at the side seam, you get what I call the shark fin. And this is
Yeah.
where if you have, if you have an hourglass shape, same thing. This is why sometimes you have 2 darts and sometimes 3 I've seen, because
Yeah.
if you try to take it in one dart, then you have this exaggerated hip curve.
Yeah.
And so what happens at the side seam, I call it the shark fin. It's not going to fit the shape because you
Yeah.
have distributed the shaping around the figure. And so, this is where, so if you wanted to get rid of the dart, I wouldn't shave it all off at the side. I would take some at the side and some at the center. So you're gonna minimize that happening.
So would you just do a muslin and baste it on where the side seams would be and then just drape the dart out on yourself kind of thing?
You could do that too. Yeah, absolutely.
So cut, no, cool. That's what I'm gonna do. I'll just cut it. It's easy. It's two pieces. So
Good.
thank you.
Okay, so other questions, comments, hopes, fears, dreams, desires? Yes, Allie.
So when you were mentioning the pleat, the front leg pleats,
Yeah.
and the being distant in the middle from the inseam and the outseam,
Mhm.
I made my trouser sloper, and then when I fitted the muslin, my inseam below the knee was weird, so I just shaved off a bit on the
Okay,
inseam, so that means
so-
that it's not.
So now you said it's weird. What is, define weird? Does it roll towards the front or toward the back?
It
or-
was collapsing. It was collapsing into the seam, so like the on my leg, it would go whoop whoop. So I just chopped that part that was folding in,
And
but
so-
then I was just
Well, then, so what you would do is just fold the pattern in half, inseam and outseam. And that new crease
and then
will be your new grain line.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
because because I've done this, when you're fitting a trouser, there are times that you have to you have to get it to fit. And there are times that this sort of thing happens. So as long as you get the silhouette right, then you go back to the pattern, and make your adjustments on the pattern. And then and I generally fold it in half and match it from the knee to the hem. And,
okay.
and then you make the crease, and wherever that crease travels up the paper, then that is your new crease and grain line.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, other questions? Everyone's crickets. Okay, well then I think, so our work is done here this evening, yes? Okay then, so I'm gonna turn off the recording and I'm gonna